Did you know that many engineers face delays or even rejection of their PE exam applications because of mistakes on their NCEES work experience form? From missing key details to unclear project description, these errors can push back your licensure by months or even an entire exam cycle. In this episode, I'm joined by Oscar Gutierrez. Oscar is a licensed professional engineer, structural engineer at GEDEON GRC Consulting, and he's going to talk about how to properly document your experience, the biggest mistakes engineers make, and what qualifies as valid engineering experience. Oscar has previously been on the show where we discussed the steps that foreign engineers can take to get their education approved by NCEES. In this episode, we'll take a deeper dive into how to accurately document your work experience and highlight some very common mistakes that can delay your approval. If you're working toward your PE license, this is an episode you're not going to want to miss, whether you're domestic or you're immigrating from another country. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and I'm excited to bring you this valuable episode of Pass the PE Exam. Oscar, welcome back to Pass the PE Exam. For those listeners who might not know you, maybe you could just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis as an engineer.
Okay. My name is Oscar Gutierrez. Thank you for the invitation, Anthony. I am a civil engineer from Venezuela. I already have 6 years of experience as a structural engineer here in U.S. Right now, I'm working for a New York-based company where I make all type of structural engineering jobs like repairs, restoration, drawings, produce drawings on day-by-day job. Previously, I worked for a different consulting companies doing like post-tension buildings, podium buildings in RC, hot rolled steel, cold form, wood design, residential, healthcare, public buildings, stuff like that. That's me right now.
Great. What key details should engineers focus on when documenting their work experience, and what common mistakes should they avoid to ensure a smooth approval process to the exam?
Okay, one of the most important things is that you need 4 years of experience under a licensed engineer in order to be approved to get your license in US. 2 of these 4 years need to be working in design, like reading the codes, proposing solutions under the supervision of a PE. In this case. But it's very important to know that need to be designing, because if you start working as a drafter and you work as a drafter for 4 years, that experience won't work for your license, because this is a design license, right? So that's why they require you to design prior to get your professional engineer license. So yeah, what type of jobs? Like reading the ACI code, AIAC code, designing like hot rolled steel beams, wood beams, TGIs, stuff like that, and proposing the structural framing in this case.
Yeah, so this is really important. I ran into this myself when I was applying for the exam years ago. And a couple things I'll add to that is, if you just say working on a project, that's not going to be enough. He needs to use the word design, like Oscar said, because to them, working is too general and they don't know what working means. It could mean drafting. It could mean designing, right? The other thing you have to be careful about is to be careful about site inspection and site visits, because you might be a design engineer working 90% of your time on design, but once a week you go out into the field and you take a look at things on the site, which may be fine. But if you start to say I'm doing design and I'm doing inspections and you don't say how much you're doing of each, they can discount your work saying, oh, well, half the stuff they're doing is inspection, so you're only going to get 2 years instead of 4. So, if your inspections are in the nature of design and they're like once a week or an hour out of your 40 hours a week, I would be very careful about how you say that and ensure that you're speaking about your tasks in the spirit of design, because that's what they're going to want to see to put you through. And it's important because you might be doing design your whole time, but if you use words like working or inspection or something like that, then they could discount your time.
That's right. That's right.
And that becomes challenging because then you lose it and then you got to go back again and figure it out.
Yeah, another very important factor is that you can add even your experience from your country. When you will fill the work experience form, you need to fill all the experience you have, even in your country. And when I say they is NCEES, will tell you which experience counts and which experience doesn't count for the PE license in this case.
Yeah, another great point. So if you are a US-based engineer you still have to do exactly what we talked about with
Same thing.
specifying design. You have to make
Yes.
sure that you have design. If you're immigrating here from somewhere else, like Oscar did, don't not show your experience like in Venezuela, for example. Put it all there, characterize it as design if it is. And then if you have work here, put it here as well. And then that state board will go through and make that determination for you as to what, because they may count some of the work outside of the country,
Of course.
right? If they think it's
Yeah,
in
so
the
if
spirit
you
of it.
if for example in your, because there are some countries that they use American codes like ACI codes, AISC codes. If you was doing design with those codes, that experience can count for your PE license.
Great. And Oscar, is there any tips that you can share for how engineers can describe their projects and responsibilities to strengthen their application?
Yes, of course. So let me explain you step by step quickly. First step, you need to go to your NCEES account, log in your account, and then go to multi-state licensure. After you go there, you will see a tab called Work Experience. You click on that, then you will click on the button Add Work Experience, which is a green button. After that, you need to click again in Add New Work Experience, and will ask you a bunch of questions that you need to be carefully when you are filling this information. For example, you need to specify the experience type, because they do this for surveying people or for engineering people. So you need to specify that your experience is in engineering. Then your start date and your end date. When I say start date and end date, is the start date and end date of the company you were with before. Employment status, part-time, full-time. Sometimes part-time, it doesn't count for this type of license. Employer name, state, and the title held, like design engineer, junior structural engineer, your position in charge on the company. Then you need to put a contact name of the PE who supervised you before, like Anthony Fasano PE, and provide his email address, because they will contact this PE in order to verify this information you are providing to NCEES. Then you will have two sections, tasks and duties, and representative project. For tasks and duties, you need to add all the information about your task, like supervising drafter, checking shop drawings, answering RFIs, stuff like that. In charge to design like small part of the framing, stuff like that. Drafter from general node to, I don't know, maybe shear wall plans, stuff like that. What are your real tasks in the company? Then in representative projects, you need to put all the representative projects that you were on before. Like sometimes they require you to provide the address, dates, and what you did in this project. Like, for example, very important, I designed all the wood headers. I designed, you need to use like the word I, because when I was filling my information, I start adding like I assist the structural engineer, and they come back to me and they said, no, you need to put the information you did by yourself, not assist, not I design, I work, I finish, stuff like that with those verbs. So, and be very specific with the task you did in the project. I finish all the footing design, I finish all the wood header design, I finish all the loading calculation like wind loads, earthquake loads, snow loads, dead loads, dry loads, using the ASCE 7-22 codes. Be very specific with the codes and the information, because sometimes they are really picky with those terms, and if you don't put the right information, they don't approve your work experience until you fix those information before.
Yeah, everything that Oscar just said is really important advice, because first of all, I can tell you that, believe it or not, sometimes it's harder to fill out this application and get it approved than to actually pass the exam. And because of what he's saying, I mean, you think about it. If you use the word, this happened to me too. If I'm working on a team of 3 people and the PE is responsible for signing and sealing the plan, but I'm doing a lot of the design work. If I say like assisted in the design because, figuring he or she is stamping it and I'm working on the design, they might not say, no, you can't assist. You've got to do the design, right? So it's just using the right terminology is really important, because if you don't, it'll get kicked back to you. And not only will you have to redo it, but now you're losing a cycle of the exam until you can take it. So it really pushes you back. So that's really, really important, using the right verbs and the right terms and the right nouns. Yes. The other thing that I'll say about this that's important is we have another video on this, and I hope that you've seen it, because you really need to keep track of your experience from the beginning of your career and your supervisors. Because if you leave a company and you worked there 5 years ago, but now you don't remember who you worked on the project with and how to get in touch with them, you may not be able to specify them. So it's really important that you're tracking all your career experience. It's kind of like keeping a resume updated of all of your projects, because it's important for these types of licensures and certifications. And you never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, exactly.
In your career down the road as an engineer. So that's really important. And you'll see some screenshots that we've been putting up here during the video, because when you go into NCEES and build this out, it's almost like you're putting your resume into there, just like Oscar walked us through with your company name and your supervisor name and the description of what you did. But Oscar, what I'd like you to do for those that are still maybe unsure is, what type of engineering experience qualifies for the PE exam application as opposed to what doesn't count?
Okay, that is a huge topic because every board have a different qualifications for that. But in general, I say in the beginning, the design, or in my case, structural design work you did, like with the codes, with all those type of information. For example, I remember one time I was working in a concrete lab doing the concrete strength test, and I sent an email to NCEES explaining this count like experience for my PE, and they said this will help, but this won't count for your PE license because that is a concrete lab stuff that is different than the PE license purposes. So yeah, basically all the experience you have designing, supervising, sometimes drafter, even doing inspection, but more designing, at least 2 years doing design, 2 of the 4 years is really, really important because they mention that a lot.
Okay. And a couple things too I'll mention. Oscar has said a few times, the boards. If you're not familiar with the process, each state has their own board that reviews the application. It's not a national thing, even though you go through NCEES, they have a specific state board that will review it. And that's important for you to know. And the one thing I would say is, if you're unclear about any of this with your board, you can usually send an email, or sometimes they even have a phone number that you can call the board, and you can ask some general questions. They may or may not give you the best answer, but what experience counts? How should I classify this? It's good to do all these things ahead of time, so you're not wasting time submitting the application, going through the whole process. And then again, like I said before, getting a kickback and having to go to the next one.
And very, very important, Anthony, is you can save this experience since the first day you start working as an engineer in US. Doesn't matter if you don't have your FE approved. It doesn't matter if you don't have your EIT certificate. Your experience counts since the first day you start working as an engineer in US. Very important, under a supervision of a professional engineer, because there is another problem. I have some friends that they work for a general contractors, like checking shop drawings, trying to help them checking the previous design, doing stuff like that. And when they go to the NCEES or the engineering board, they said, okay, this experience may or probably can count, but you don't have a PE who can approve this experience, unfortunately, because we was working for a general contractor company. So there is a huge problem or big deal in this case that you need to manage. If your goal is to take your PE license, you need to find a engineering company where they have a PE who can validate your experience, NCEES or through the engineering board process.
Yes, this is very important if you work for a general contractor or another organization now here's this possible solution for that. It's not always going to work, but I know a couple people that did this. If you're working for a general contractor, let's say, and you're working on a project, and there's a consulting firm that's also working on the project, right? If there is a PE at the consulting firm that happened to be overseeing the project, even though you didn't work for their company, you may be able to go to them and list them and explain that to your state board. I'm not saying it's going to work every time, but if you're watching this video and you're like, oh man, I didn't know that. And I already worked for like 2 years with a contractor, you may be able to find a PE that was on the project in some capacity, even not in your organization, and they may be able to get approval for that. I'm not guaranteeing it, but it's an option to try, so you don't lose that experience.
You don't lose that kind of time.
That's one thing to think about. So here's another question, Oscar, that's important. Very rarely does an engineer work on one project at a time, right? We work on multiple projects at the same time. So
that's correct.
When we're writing our application, how do we organize it to make it clear for the board if we worked on like 3 or 4 projects at the same time?
Okay, so like they show as a representative projects, you need to add the most powerful projects you were before with this company or with this PE. What I did is create like number one. Okay, first I check all the projects I worked before. I said, okay, we will be my powerful project in order to start my list. I start numbering like number one, number two, number three, number five. I did like 5 projects for each experience that I have. So after I number all my previous projects, I start adding them like one by one, number two, number three, number four, number five. And using the same format. Date, project location. When they say date, it's approximately date when you were on this project. The location of the project and all responsibilities you had in this project in that moment. I copy that, paste, type number two, and start changing my information for the second project. Because sometimes they if you don't put the date, they will come back to you. Like when you were in this project, what is the project location? How I can know if that is a real project? So that is really important. So if you are working in multiple projects, try to make a list of the most important projects you were before in order to add in the work experience form. You don't need to add all the projects you worked before. Just like 3 to 5 is more than enough.
Yeah, just be really organized about it so they're clear. And I think with this whole process, you want to think through it and follow everything Oscar's saying with the idea of you want to avoid them coming back to you to have to redo stuff, because that's where like the time lag can really come in if you're trying to accelerate your license.
And like you said also, because I work for a different companies at this point, when you will leave the company, fill all your experience form in order to get approved and in order to avoid what you said a few minutes ago, like 5 years after, you need to call this company, you don't know who is working there right now or who is on charge. So if you know you will leave a company, talk with them about your experience and about if they can approve your experience through NCEES.
Oscar, what other challenges did you face when you were completing your experience form, or other resources or strategies? Anything else you want to share here?
Most of the challenge was like the verbs, like I design, I finish, because they come back to you like you need to put the right information, and that will create a delay in the process because they can take 10-15 days in order to approve your experience, and if you didn't correctly, they will come back like, okay, fix this, fix that, and you will have like a delay of 15 to 30 days more, which is, if you need that faster for your license because you pass both exams, you need the experience in order to, apply for the license, that will be a problem for you in that moment. So try always to put the right terms. I design, I finish, I check it, I inspection, all the verbs including the word I.
Yes, very important. And the easiest way to do this, I found, is find a coworker that had their application approved and ask them if you can look at it.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, they will contact the PE. And sometimes it's by email. They ask very personal information to that PE. And sometimes PEs or engineers are really busy. So sometimes they don't see the emails, and that will delay the process also. So sometimes you need to reach out then, like, oh, did you receive the email from NCEES? I know you are busy, but I really need this. I need your help. Please check the email because I really need to get my license, whatever. Because sometimes there are some Ps that they saw the email, but maybe they forget because they are too busy, and you can still waiting for 2 months. But NCEES showed to you like pending for professional engineer approval. So it's not by them, it's by the P in this case.
You really have to be a project manager to try to get your PE.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah. All right. Any last pieces of advice you want to share with our audience before we let you go?
So my advice as an immigrant engineer is like never stop, dreaming or stop feeling that you can do whatever you want. Because if I did after coming back from Venezuela, anyone can do this goal of, to take your to engineering path in US. And very important, always save all your work experience information, because if your goal is to take your PE license, you need to have this information always in a Excel spreadsheet, Word document, wherever you want, in order to start completing this experience previous to take your license or even to take your PE exam. So since the first day, I work in this project, take a note, what did you did in this project? Because that's another thing. Sometimes you can forget about your tasks or responsibilities on one specific project. So take like a spreadsheet with you, type all the projects, all your responsibilities. So in this case, you will have a better approval rate when you submit this information to NCEES. And very important, NCEES is approved for most of the engineering boards. So right now, everything is including in the NCEES, like FE exam approved, notice, like the work experience form, like the credential evaluation, because even when you have your credential evaluation, who send the credential evaluation to the engineering board is NCEES. So all your engineering record should be inside your NCEES account right now. It's very important. And yeah, never stop, working hard and smart, of course.
All right. Well, muchas gracias, mi amigo, for coming back again and
You're
joining
welcome.
us on past the PE exam. He's been here before. I'm sure he'll be here again, but he's given us some really good help for our subscribers out there that may be immigrants and are trying to, overcome some of these challenges. And even just if you're a domestic U.S. engineer, the verbiage that Oscar's saying is critical for you too.
Yes, it's the same.
I dealt with it myself. So Oscar, thank you again for joining us on Past the PE exam.
You are very welcome, and thank you for the invitation.
I hope you found this week's video helpful. In upcoming videos, I will solve some more PE exam practice problems and answer more questions from our subscribers. Past the PE exam videos will be published weekly, so please be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss something that could make a substantial difference in your exam result and ultimately your engineering career development. And please ask questions and leave comments below this video and I will respond to you. Let me know if there's a specific topic that you'd like me to cover or a question that you need answered. Past the PE exam, we'll have you covered. I'll see you next week on Past the PE exam.